Welcome to the Casa de Cavazos pod.
What's up, y'all?
This is Ada Cavazos Cuellar. I'm with my brother Justin Cavazos and
me.
my brother Nathan Cavazos, and this is our first podcast.
Woo! We did it! Yeah, at long last.
So I'll tell you a little bit about who we are. We're South Texans, born and raised. We have some family members that were born in Mexico, and then we have some family members that have been in Texas as far back as we know. So we just traced it today. You can go back at least 7 generations, a family that was already in this area when Mexico was annexed by Texas. Yes. That's pretty crazy.
I feel like immigration is a hot button topic nowadays, but it's so interesting to see these people, the Tejanos, who have lived in this region like forever, the same place, and the border has just moved over them instead of them crossing that border. It's pretty cool.
Very cool. So this pod is to try to fill a gap that we think is out there. We don't think there are a lot of South Texans out there that have Mexican ancestry, Tejano roots, that have a podcast like the one we're going to present to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're out there, but...
Who knows? It's possible, but we think maybe there's a gap there, and maybe we can talk to people who are from the area and maybe other Texans that'd be interested in what we have to talk about.
There's a lot of speculation that goes on in the Casa de Cavazos. We try to be well informed, but we like to poke at things and kind of figure out why things are the way they are.
And we like to talk about sports, news, politics, tech, electric cars,
you name
music.
It. So what do you got? What do you got today?
Well, we're big into sports, and we just realized that Lebron James is turning 40 tomorrow.
Congratulations, King.
So we're going to talk a little bit about LeBron.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know Ada is a historic LeBron hater.
I don't know about historic.
You're up there.
Does that mean I'm like all time in terms of top 10 haters?
You know, like there's the GOAT debate. You know, there's the debate of the GOAT hater. I feel like you're in the running for not necessarily like the greatest span of hating, but in terms of the longevity of hating, just like LeBron.
Well, he's never been on my team, which is the San Antonio Spurs. Spurs. Right away, you're an enemy if you're not a San Antonio Spur.
Everyone, KD?
Well, you know, you're an enemy at first, and then if I like you personally, I might cheer for you. KD is special. I mean, he went to the University of Texas at Austin, so that was automatically a good thing for him.
So you're saying that you'd buried the hatchet with LeBron if at 45 years old, he was like, I'll do a stint with the Spurs. I want to play with Wemby for a little bit, see what it's all about.
I don't know. The hate at this point is so ingrained, I'm not sure I'd be able to do that. I think if he had a good attitude about it and was willing to be a team player and help the young guys along and not try to force trades, then maybe. So, yeah, I mean, he's not a Spur at this point.
For now.
At some point, he's been an arch enemy with the Lakers. So that's an issue.
The Heat in those 2014,
that's true.
2015.
They played in the finals.
2013, 2014.
Spurs versus Heat, which I actually went to some of the games in the finals. So, yeah, he's not my favorite.
Yeah, but amazing that he's made it this far, 40 years old, and is still making somewhat of an impact on a team. You know, the last time that there was like a 40-year-old who was really like pulling some minutes was Vince Carter.
I would argue he's not really making a positive impact at this point.
Or an impact at all.
I think he's making a negative impact when you're commanding a max salary at that age, when you're not really playing defense anymore. Because I think it'd be hard to play great defense at the age of 40 with that many miles on your legs.
There's still a lot of people who are afraid of LeBron.
Who are these people?
Just people who respect him, like the other players.
I don't feel like I'm seeing the same fear.
Definitely, it's not there. But I mean, when it comes to nut crunch time, there are people who still believe in the legend.
I'll always remember that someone told me that LeBron would win more titles than Tim Duncan, and I was adamant that that would not happen. I am on my way to being correct on that one.
I mean, that could still happen.
Tim Duncan coming back?
No, LeBron exceeding Tim Duncan.
How, though? Like, Tim Duncan has 5.
I mean, if he plays till he's 50, and he's pretty good about getting players that he wants to play with, it's conceivable he can get a few more titles.
It could be conceivable if he's willing to take a very low salary. At this point, he hasn't shown that he's willing to take a lower salary. He's commanding max salaries, which is ridiculous.
Well, he's willing to be traded as long as his son comes with him, so who knows? Maybe he'll be with Steph soon.
Yeah, but the team needs him to be better about his salary flexibility. And the reason Tim Duncan got more titles at the end was because he took a smaller salary. He realized as an older player, he needed to take a smaller salary to get some of those younger players to get paid.
Wow.
And keep the other core members.
Just as a little reminder here, even with some missed games, LeBron is playing 35 minutes a game this season, averaging 23.5 points, 7.9 rebounds, and 9 assists, which is his highest since the 2019-2020
Oh, what's his PER
season.
though? Is he?
I don't know. I'm not on that screen.
You gotta Google the PER. PER is now the metric that tells you if that really means much or not. So
I mean, he's still at 21.8, which is very respectable.
it's
Yeah.
respectable, but
For 40?
he was in the 30s in the past, right? There were times where he was at the top of the PER. Who's at top PER right now? What's their number?
I don't know.
Is it Jokic?
Probably Jokic or Giannis. Giannis is having a crazy season right now.
All right, well,
Well, they're 1 and 2.
Jokic and Giannis?
Yes.
in the PER.
Who's won?
Joker.
Nice.
Well, he's not my favorite guy.
Oh,
That's the point. That's the point. I don't cheer for that guy, and I'm not sure I ever will.
Well, LeBron's still at number 21, so
he's top 25. So he's a top 25 player in the NBA. at 40.
But PR doesn't tell you anything about defense, right?
no.
Well, so there you go. If you somehow implemented defense into that, I'm sure it'd be way worse.
Look at his plus minus stat, possibly.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about a medical topic because
Speaking of
Let's move on
of
to-
LeBron's age and his health at this point.
Yeah,
moving on to
kind of a segue because I'm in the medical field. So let's talk about a telehealth topic because I've done a lot of telehealth, and I thought this one article is really interesting where there's a lawsuit by a family against Amazon One Medical. We don't know a lot of details, so there's a lot we could speculate on. But essentially, this 45 or so year old man with diabetes complained about shortness of breath, coughing up blood through a video call. And they gave him an inhaler, or they prescribed him an inhaler, and a few hours later, he's dead. So there are a lot of missing details that we're not able to access, but I think it's a very interesting case because I've done a lot of telehealth, and I feel like I've gotten patients like that tell me they've got shortness of breath, coughing up blood. And to me, it's a very easy decision. That's someone that needs to be seen in person, needs to go to the emergency room. But there are a lot of factors that could be in play here. There could be some pressure from the company, could be some pressure from the patient. Of course, there could be an issue of incompetence because I have met a lot of doctors who feel like telemedicine is a low-risk thing and they can kind of get away with doing things that they probably wouldn't do in person.
I mean, I know like some people do telehealth for like the work-life balance thing. There's offers this flexibility, you can work from anywhere. But is it true that there are also like a lot of doctors on there who have lost like their licensures or their board certifications?
I don't think so because every job that I've applied for has required licenses. And I also think that they require board certifications from the ones I've applied to and the ones I've worked for. So I don't think that that's really the issue. I think that at some point people were floating around information that, there's never been like a telehealth lawsuit, which to me it's illogical to feel better because of that. Like, it's never happened. Well, maybe it's never happened because telehealth hasn't been around that long. Maybe there aren't that many telehealth visits at this point.
Yeah.
So it's not really something that's giving you evidence that it's less risky medical legally. It's just there, that information. Like, okay, well, as of right now, there are no lawsuits because this hasn't been around that long.
So how could this have been prevented? What could have been done differently?
Well, I think that we need to get a lot more details. I mean, it could be possible that the doctor just, or the nurse practitioner, because there are a lot of nurse practitioners that do telemedicine as well, could have just done something bad. For whatever reason, may have thought it was okay to just give the person an inhaler and that was proper medical care. But I think a lot of the patients, they kind of are negligent in a way sometimes when they try to seek care for such issues through telemedicine. So that's one possibility. Maybe the patient needed to realize that telemedicine wasn't the right step, that they needed to just go to the hospital. And I believe that there was something about how the patient did the day before try to seek care at a hospital or try to call a hospital. So they kind of knew that they needed to seek medical attention, possibly at a hospital.
Well, apparently he'd already been sick for an entire week.
Yeah.
But the other thing is you're saying that we're missing information. What information would help you determine if it was actually negligence?
Well, if there was a recording of the visit, because it was a video visit, that would be very helpful so that we could actually see what exactly happened during the interaction. But my experience with some of the companies I've worked with is that usually the video visits and the phone calls are not recorded. So I'm not sure if that information's out there. In that case, it's going to be a he said, she said kind of thing, which makes it more difficult for the provider. Yeah, we also need to know if there's any pressure from the patient, if there was any pressure from the patient. You know, sometimes the patients will be like, no, I can't go to the hospital because of this reason, I can't afford it, or whatever excuse, and they try to pressure you that you need to treat them online. And then sometimes they can also be very abusive, and they'll sometimes even curse at you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there are like a ton of factors involved too with this. I mean, we see a lot with acquisitions from one company to another, right? Like One Health was its own organization initially and got bought up by Amazon at a certain point. Whenever there's a new stakeholder in the equation, they're not just buying out the property for competition or whatever. Sometimes that's why they do it, but sometimes they just want to squeeze out profit out of the model that they already have, right? And sometimes patient care can suffer, or just any type of customer service can suffer if it's just like, if the main goal is how many people can you talk to in like a certain amount of time.
Well, and I think one of the goals too with the companies that I've worked with is they may not say it explicitly, but implicitly they may say that they want you to treat as many patients as you can online, and you should kind of lean towards treating online rather than referral. Like, for example, I've had situations where they're like, well, you know, if the kid, per the mom or the dad, was exposed to strep, like you should pretty much treat them for strep. I don't do those things because when I start talking to the parent, they start telling me stuff that is consistent with the virus a lot of times, and I feel like they need to get a strep swab. But there definitely have been things that have been said that imply that we should give them the benefit of the doubt and treat them for strep, for example. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that could have played a factor, some type of pressure from the company that, hey, like, you have unhappy customers if you don't treat them online. Okay. Well, and then even the doctors, the nurse practitioners have a pressure too that's sometimes within them because we get bad reviews online. People have told me stuff like, well, you're a 1-star doctor, so I'm not going to listen to you. Even though it's really the same type of population of patients who have unrealistic expectations via telemedicine.
Are you actually a 1-star doctor?
I don't believe I'm really a 1-star. I don't believe I'm a 1-star doctor, but ever since I started doing online work, I've got horrible reviews. So
going back to what Justin said, one of the articles that I actually read about this was saying when the acquisition was made that there were a lot of cuts. So all of a sudden, a lot of these clinicians were having to take on extra patients. So it says that may have been a factor as well.
Yeah, that could be a factor for sure if you're being pressured to see patients more quickly. Because that's a factor in all of medicine, I think. You know, if you're in person or you're online, if you're having to work faster, maybe you miss a detail. I was also wondering, did the provider know that the patient was diabetic? Sometimes the patient doesn't say that for whatever reason. And if that information isn't obtained, then maybe that makes you think, well, this patient is a healthy patient, and maybe coughing up blood, shortness of breath isn't a big deal. Maybe they're just wheezing and they need an inhaler, and they can follow up with their primary care doctor in 2 days.
It's fucked up, man. No, so sometimes like the way that these systems get created, especially when you're trying to squeeze out profit and get as many people through the door as possible, you can only spend so much time getting a patient history and getting all the information you need to properly address it, right? And in that way, like, even if a doctor is not necessarily actively being negligent, the system creates opportunities for negligence along the way.
Well, these telemedicine services definitely create those environments, because oftentimes they're patients that you don't have any records for. So if that's the first time they've been there, you have no idea, like a primary care doctor would, that they have a history of diabetes and what medications to take, and maybe some other medical conditions they may have. Who knows, maybe a patient had a hospitalization in the past, or they had pneumonia, and you wouldn't know that unless the patient directly told you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something else.
I know that because you've had this very nice life that you've created for yourself as a doctor, you have access to things like the latest technology. Sometimes that includes electric vehicles. Especially living in a place like Texas, there's a lot of narratives around how EVs are inferior to gas cars in a lot of ways. And I just want to know about your experience as an electric vehicle driver. I've never actually owned an electric vehicle. I've had the pleasure of being in them, and they're very nice and they're very luxe, and I don't know, they seem cool. I want to know what your perspective is on the electric vehicle.
Well, when I first learned about Tesla, it wasn't anything political. I believe it was in about 2012. I tend to visit cnet.com a lot because I'm into technology, and they were talking about Tesla. And they were talking about what they were planning to do regarding a fully battery-powered car and all these cool little things that Tesla was going to do. So then I think also at the same time, one of the people I was working with at the hospital started talking about their interest. And I think that he actually put in the reservation first. But I went ahead and put in my reservation too in, I believe, 2012. And then I got my car delivered in, I believe, either April or May of 2013. Nothing political about it. I just thought it was cool, like cool tech. And there were definitely growing pains initially. But Tesla was really good about the service, even though initially their service center was in Houston, the closest one to me at least. They would come down and take the car for service.
So what kind of growing pains?
I think there were a lot of repairs that needed to be made. Not necessarily anything that made the car undrivable, but like, for example, it had the panoramic roof that would actually open, and like one time, like one of the arms just broke off. So stuff like that.
This sounds like the same shit that people are saying about like new Teslas like today.
Yes.
But at least like back then, like it was like new and you were on the cutting edge. You could give them some grace because it was new for them, right?
But also, like I said, the closest service center was in Houston. So that was more annoying because that's about a 5-hour drive from us. So that was annoying, having to deal with like scheduling service. Although they were pretty good about, like I said, picking up the car, taking it, or maybe even doing like a mobile repair, just having a ranger come down. And then the other thing too is at that point, the charging infrastructure really hadn't been built. It's very early. I don't think I took the car anywhere for a while because I really wanted to be sure that I wasn't going to get stranded somewhere. And I didn't want to charge like at an RV park or something and wait there for like 4 hours or more, depending on how much was needed. So I didn't even really start traveling until I think once the Kingsville supercharger was built, I think that's when I got more comfortable. So I think the relatively frequent repairs, service centers far away, not having the charging infrastructure, those were more the growing pains. But I mean, I love that the car was always ready to go, always plugged in, and Never had to get in the car and realize my gas tank was empty and I'd have to stop at the gas station and be late to work. No oil changes. So, I mean, once the charging infrastructure got better, it really wasn't a concern anymore as far as traveling long distances. And now we have service centers all over the place, and we have one nearby. So,
Was there like a certain like gawking at the vehicle, like when you first started? Was there like a curiosity about it versus like the narrative sometimes where you hear people say like, well, like electric cars are always blowing up, and there's this problem, like you can never get anywhere you want to go, and you'll get stranded.
yeah, because I think initially it wasn't political. It was a really cool gadget and something really technologically advanced. I remember they delivered the car to me actually at a gas station. I guess that was the easiest for the delivery person to meet at. And so I remember he took off the car, parked it there at the gas station, and someone came up. He's like, "Is that a Tesla? Congratulations." Like, he was pretty excited about it. And then I also had a lot of other people, you know, look at the car and say good things about it. Some of the doctors wanted to look at it. So it definitely was more of a cool thing initially. People were not even thinking of it as a political thing initially. Was my experience, or at least it wasn't overt anti-EV at that point.
What are people saying about EVs in your world, Nathan? What is your world? What do you do?
I'm an electrician, so I've installed quite a few of the chargers for these cars. And I was wondering why Ada kept going with the political angle, but it's become extremely political. If anybody ever asks me about my car, it either falls into two categories. People want to know if it's fast and how long it takes to charge. And then, of course, I have the other people who, as soon as they hear I have a Tesla, they look at me and they're like, well, what about all the cars that are blowing up? Which is not true.
How many cars do blow up?
I don't know the numbers, but I think the percentages are that combustion engine cars blow up more than electric cars.
Yeah, I mean, combustion's in the name.
That's true. That makes sense. So I'm not sure we pointed this out, but Nate's driving the original Tesla that I bought, and it's still alive. And the battery's still working well, even though people think that these batteries are just going to die and the car won't last that long.
How many miles does it have on it?
It has 74,000 miles. And that's one of the things they tell me right away. Well, wait 10 years. And I'm like, well, actually, my car's already 10 years old.
Well, and 75,000 miles isn't the only thing that is showing how much battery has been used, because it's also losing charge when it's outside sitting. So when the car is overheating because it's so hot outside, like, it's also cooling down the battery. So even though there's 75,000 miles on it, there's even more as far as
The wear on the battery.
charge and recharge wear, I guess.
I mean, I guess just wait another 10 years. What's when that car is 20 years old? I mean,
Yeah. I honestly think it's the greatest thing. I have another Tesla now. And then I also just recently got a Rivian. And I don't really want a gas car again. Electric is so nice. And
yeah, but to be fair, like, your new Tesla went backwards by a lot.
apparently when Nathan drove the Tesla a few days ago, he thought it sucked. The 2022 Tesla S.
Yes, it's very counterintuitive. They decided to replace the regular steering wheel with this yoke. And you can't even, like, honk the horn without just pressing the middle. There's a side button. There's a side button for your turn signals, your horn. And you don't even have a shifter now. You got to swipe up on a screen.
I've had this like conversation a couple of times with people, like just in the general like car trend space, not even just electrics, where all of these buttons that you need to do important shit while you're driving involves like a touchscreen. There's no physical buttons. You have to take your eyes off the road to know that you're pressing the right thing for like changing the radio station or changing the temperature control in the car, like all those little things. But then you're taking like essential driving functions, like, I don't know, using your windshield wipers or blinkers or having your horn in case someone's going to crash into you. Like, you shouldn't need to spend that amount of mental time and energy. It's like, oh my God, where is that?
Yeah, even on the 2013, like the AC controls are all touchscreen, and it's kind of hard sometimes. I want to adjust something, but I don't want to take my eye off the road. So I mean, that's why I kind of think her new car went backwards, because like now everything is a button. It's not just the one or two little things.
I will say that you get used to it. I have gotten used to the yoke, and I do kind of like it. It feels like I'm driving a race car.
Brainwashed by the yoke.
I'm not really an Elon fan at this point, but Tesla has a really great infrastructure, and we have a local service center, so that's helpful.
And the yoke was so great that they brought back the regular wheel.
Yes, so now you have two options. Now if you order a Tesla S, you can choose either the yoke or the regular steering wheel. But yeah, like I think some of the things don't make sense. Like you probably should have stocks. I still deal with trying to signal properly. Although I did just notice this 3 years later.
3 years!
that there's a ridge there. So I guess if you kind of like felt the ridge, you could know either put your thumb down or your thumb up.
Which one's left and which one's right, up or down?
I think it's up.
See, you don't know.
I think to the right is the top button.
And that's weird too, because you usually think like, all right, left, right.
Yeah.
You know, like in like English speaking countries and a lot of countries where we read from left to right, you think, all right, left first, right second. So that you're saying it's right on top and left on bottom too?
I think. I'll have to look next time I drive.
I can't believe this is the second time I'm going to say this podcast, but that's fucked up, man. What the hell?
The other thing is that there has been improvement in the battery technology with Tesla. In the past, I would drive a red Tesla, which is the one that Nathan has now, and I couldn't make it all the way to San Antonio without a charge. And now with the blue Tesla, the long range 2022 S, I've made it all the way to San Antonio, all the way to North San Antonio, comfortably. So that's nice.
Yeah, I have a very different experience with just observing electric cars because I live in Chicago. You know, it's a major city. The places you have to go to most of the time aren't like long haul destinations, right? So you would assume like you just take it back to your garage, plug it in, top it off, and you're pretty much like always ready to go. But there are a bunch of electric cars that are just street parked in Chicago. You know, like they'll find a charger somewhere, or they'll get like recharged. Like our local grocery store has a couple electric car charging spots. So if you like just take your car down in the grocery store, you could go top it up for a little bit. You know, charge it even a little bit. And there's a way wider variety of electric vehicles too. You know, you're seeing not only like the Teslas and the Rivians, people who came into the game only doing electric cars, but you're seeing like your Fords, your BMWs, your Hyundais. Like they have like those cars out there too. I haven't been in any of them, but they look nice and they look like regular cars. You know, and the way that you can tell them apart is they have that EL in front of the name of every license plate, because it tells you like it's a specific electric vehicle that's like registered in the state. But there's like all this like actual previous car company know-how that is starting to adopt, you know, all of this electric vehicle. So like if there's something we can thank Tesla for is for, you know, making that first step, making it something that people actually desired and wanted in a lot of markets. But apparently they still haven't learned a lot of the manufacturing processes of things or how to make smart decisions based on a history of knowing how to build a fucking car.
Well, on that note, I do want to say with the Rivian, I feel like they've done a really good job. They haven't tried to be fancy about the wheel. It's a normal wheel. You've got the stocks. It feels like a very well-built car. I would say it's higher quality than the Tesla. A lot more lux than the Tesla. So I think Rivian's a really good brand, and I know a lot of people are upset with Elon's politics and are looking to move away from Tesla. And it looks like Rivian might be a good company as far as another EV option. But they're going through the same growing pains too. So they've got to figure out their charging infrastructure. They also have to figure out their maintenance and repair issues. They got to build out more service centers as well.
Yeah, like the other big question too is affordability. Like you can be on the cutting edge for all these things, but you're not going to get massive adoption until you have the options that have the range that these premium options have in terms of mileage, and also can be afforded at the price that someone would pay for a gas car.
Well, for Rivian, because I early adopted with Tesla as well, a lot of it is similar. The process is similar. I think they're doing what Tesla did, which is you start with the more expensive cars and you start to scale. And they are also working on their third model, which will be the affordable version, the 5-seat SUV. So that would be where they start to maybe get more adoption, more affordability, and maybe start to make it as a car company.
We'll see. We'll see if they get the support that they need.
Well, technically, they may be getting some support. The Biden administration gave them a $6.6 billion loan to build a Georgia plant, to build the R2, which is their smaller, affordable SUV.
And it's being made in America, so that's cool too.
Has it been approved?
It's been approved by the Biden administration, but I don't think the loan has been closed. So I think it's kind of a race to make sure it gets closed before Trump gets in there, because he might want to rescind that loan.
Cars seem cool. Wish I could afford it.
You might be able to afford the R2, the 5-seater. The only issue is you do live in Chicago, and one thing we do know is that batteries don't do that great in the cold.
No. And also, personally, it's too much car for me. I've been around it. It's massive, and especially in terms of like street parking in like a city environment, like it gets rough out there, man. It's very competitive.
I'm in the R1S, which is the 7-seat SUV, but they're building the R2. It's going to be smaller. It's going to have a smaller footprint, so that should be a lot more manageable.
Bring back the smart car, man. Bring back the smart car.
Well, you're probably going to have kids, right? So I don't know how that's going to work if you have a smart car.
Well, they can drive their own. It's perfectly sized for them.
When they're babies?
Yep.
I don't know about that, sir.
Self-driving.
All right, well, let's talk about video games. You guys are real into video games.
Yeah, love me some games.
I thought this article in the New York Times was really interesting, called "Video Games Can't Afford to Look This Good." And it was a very interesting article because it actually went through a timeline of what graphics have looked like as far back as I think 1982.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that's like 40 years of history,
40
right?
plus years at this point.
40 years of history, which seems like a long time, but I mean, if you think about even cars, right? Like one was like Henry Ford's like first like Model T.
Yeah.
Like was that like in the 20s? Like 1920s. So we have like 100 years of cars, and we've had all these advancements, but the amount of advancement in graphics over time in just this 40-year span is huge, and computing has gone along with it. I have definitely seen a lot of very vocal, often toxic people online talking about graphics being king. Like, why would I play that game? The graphics suck. But that's actually like a minority of people. Most people don't care. Most people don't care whether or not something has the best graphics as long as it's fun to play. I think a lot of studios have been kind of putting their eggs in a different basket. I will also say, though, I think there's, from a studio's perspective, an artistic insecurity about video games as an art form. So they feel that, in a way, creating this fidelity, making it more film-like, will make people think that it's like a piece of art versus like a game or a pastime or a toy.
So they are building these games as films, or they are essentially budgeting these games as films now.
Yeah, I mean, like the voice talent has been solid for a number of years, especially for those AAA titles. But you're starting to see like a lot of like TV and film actors starting to get onto it, like Christopher Judge, who was in like the main like Stargate TV series for many years. He's playing like the titular character in God of War now. You know, and he's doing like the motion capture at his age and his body type. Like he's doing all of that work, where it might have been someone that you wouldn't even recognize on the street before, right? There's this crossover that it is happening thanks to that and thanks to the industry. At the same time, I don't know how much players really care about how much work and money goes into all of that. Like when the PS5 came out, people got really mad that some of the games were costing $70 brand new. And considering like how many millions of dollars it takes, like what they were talking about Spider-Man 2 in that article, like that's like this PS5 exclusive at the time. It's going to be on PC
and shockingly, it cost $300 million. That's like a movie budget.
Yeah.
It's like a blockbuster movie budget.
Well, that's what it's become. Like even Cyberpunk 2077 was like $400 million to make, and it got a lot of backlash because when it was released, it was performing very poorly. But it's like Justin saying, it's basically become like a movie production. So if you look at the credits, so now some of these games you have hundreds to thousands of people working all on one game. So it's kind of impossible to bring the budget down when you have that many people working. Like if you look at the older games, like the teams like Nintendo had, like Super NES era, you had a team of like 3 to 5 people making a video game. So
Yeah, you have like these people now who are like specialized in a certain area, and you like hear these stories about how far into fidelity they've gone. Like the thing that was really funny to me was like there was visual artists in the 2018 God of War game, and in the one that came out more recently, the lead character is shirtless. So there is an artist that went in there and had to sculpt the character's areola. They had to kind of like make his nipples look really accurate. Or the story about how like in Red Dead Redemption 2, like, oh, you can see like all the work that we put into this. Like when the weather system gets colder, the shape of the horse's testicles change when you're riding it throughout the countryside. Like that's like the level that they're going down to for this realism and for this fidelity.
yeah, and some of the people that are working on that game are specifically doing these tiny little things that unless somebody tells you about, you're probably never going to notice anyway.
I feel that way with sound. I feel that way with sound. I'm a sound professional myself, and I care a lot about how video games sound for immersion, for some of the great soundtracks that have come out. But then some people will play through the game, like they'll just like look at it and play it. They'll listen to podcasts, or maybe they live with a partner, and the partner is like watching something on the TV, and they're sitting on the couch with a handheld device that they're not listening to, they're not experiencing it. But then you have these individuals who are working on very specific things. Like maybe it's like music for this one scene, or for like Spider-Man. I saw like a talk at the Game Sound Conference in Burbank, California, talking about how like, okay, so this team is the one that's working on all the mission sounds. There's a team that's working on the sounds for when the player's traveling through the environment. This person is responsible for like Peter Parker's combat sounds. This person's responsible for Miles Morales' combat sounds. And it's like there's like not only like one person, but like entire teams who are working on these very minute, specific things that some people don't care about. Some people don't notice. Like I don't think that they shouldn't do it, but at the same time, I think like a lot of these companies are looking at it from this like top-down perspective. Like people care about fidelity, people care about like how awesome this game looks, how awesome this game sounds. So like by that merit, they will buy it. I don't know if the article covered this because I didn't read it, but it's been known for a while that a lot of the major console manufacturers, PlayStation, Microsoft, Nintendo, sell their hardware at a loss. The amount that it costs to make a Nintendo Switch or to make a PS5 is not represented in the MSRP, and they plan on making that back through software.
But I don't think these budgets are sustainable. I don't think that they're long term going to be able to afford $300 million plus budgets for these games. And they also point out in the article that a lot of these younger kids don't really even care. They'll play Roblox, they'll play Minecraft, they'll play Fortnite. I mean, Roblox has terrible graphics because I've seen it. And they're perfectly happy with that. They don't care about the graphics. They care about how fun it is and how they get to play with their friends or other people online.
Much like the Amazon acquisition of One Medical, like a lot of like private equity groups are buying smaller studios in order to kind of like pump up their numbers or whatever and get this certain amount of funding to work on this idea. And then even if the game is successful, they will shut down the studio, because if they decide it's not made enough money for us. Like they're kind of making these kind of like higher level decisions, not based on like the artistic quality or even just like the gameplay merits of a game. Like how fun is it? It's like, oh, how can we just squeeze as much money out of players? How can we make a game that will just like earn us back all of that?
I think that's why Nintendo's been able to stay successful, because what I was reading about them is that they've kind of combated this because, well, I mean, I know if you've own consoles recently, like they're never the highest powered one. Their idea is we're going to just beat this with creativity. And you see their games, like, they're never the best graphics. It's all about gameplay, which they've always been. I mean, I think they only had one console where they were actually the most powerful, which was the Nintendo 64. Other than that, they've always been behind.
Yeah, I remember like talking to some folks who were like like independent game developers and their process of how they, want to build out like a game, and they'll come up with these ideas like, oh, let's think about this mechanic, and then their whole like step by step process of figuring out what they want to do with the game. But much later in the process was, all right, let's find the fun. Like, why the fuck is finding the fun in a game? And I think that's supposed to be someone's hobby and something that someone can like relax and enjoy and interact with at a certain level. Like, why is finding the fun like so low on the priority list? And it's just something that's kind of like gotten even in like the independent sphere. In the independent sphere, like it's not gotten to some people's heads. Like, this should be fun. This should be something that people would want to do. And it's like, no, like I really need to think out this mechanic and work it out, or have like this kind of like fidelity of graphics.
Well, I think we reached the fidelity that I think PS3, what people talk about. Like, you go back to PS3 and like jump to PS5, you're like, yeah, there's a difference. You're able to have like bigger environments, all that stuff. But like the actual like character models and stuff, like it didn't blow you away like going from like the 16-bit sprites, 2D side scrollers to like polygons. Like that leap's no longer there. And that's what they're focusing on. And
Yeah, and like the consumer hardware at scale, it's hard to even have the machines in people's houses to have these graphics. Like, if you really want like the top of the line, like, oh, the graphics matter, every bit of performance is like, you're talking to like enthusiasts who are spending over $2,000 on a gaming PC. Probably closer to what do you think, $5,000?
if you buy the top of the line, you can probably put about 10,000 for the top of the line.
And does that include like the monitor? Like a 4K like ultra wide monitor or whatever the fuck.
It could, but I mean that could also push you even higher.
It's just like unattainable for a lot of people, but it's a vocal minority, And I'm someone who likes tinkering. I like computer games. I like being able to have like a machine that does all that. But then I play all that. I'm playing like a 2D side scrolling game. After all that came out like 6 years ago.
Yeah, but you're also talking about people that own these systems. They're trying to get like every possible frame. So you're going to play this game at 300 frames per second, where you could probably play the game at 100 frames per second with like a $2,000 PC. So
yeah, gaming industry is a little weird sometimes.
Well, I think you pointed out too, private equity, and that's really taking over this whole country. They will buy anything, and they will likely plunder it at some point, because it's all about making money. And that's not a good thing.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yes. All right. Well, that was a nice conversation.
Is it over? Is it done?
I mean, do you want to talk about anything else?
Oh, órale, güey.
Huh?
I'm happy to end this here. So if
All right.
anyone
Well,
made it this far,
that was our first podcast. We'll have many more in the future, talking about a variety of topics, current events, other things that come up. But we have a lot of different interests, and we'll keep it interesting. Until next time. How do you not like